Stand-up comedy is a really weird career to pursue. In the best case scenario, you're performing in a dingy underground comedy club, just saying vile stuff. The room is dirty, but people are laughing. And that's where real comedy happens. But sometimes you're performing in non-comedy venues. You're doing a corporate gig where they want you to work clean, or you're doing some weird bar night where there's just construction workers talking shit about their wives being racist, and a comedy show just pops up like right next to their face, and they're trying not to look at you like you're this old person from high school that they see at the mall they want to look directly at, and you're just trying to get their attention. Weird, really weird gigs in comedy. Today on the show was a good friend of mine, Joe Pontillo. He has had some really weird gigs. In fact, one time he was a cloud. Yeah, he was in a cloud costume for a local news station promoting their weather reports. And this episode, a lot like his weird little scrawny legs that were stuffed into white tights that were sticking out of the cloud, this is a bit too much. You know,
I almost agreed to do like a free comedy appearance in someone's backyard.
No, wait, you didn't do it, right?
No.
But you did agree.
I did. I was like, yeah, I got you.
You said, I will do your barbecue.
on the comp.
That's one of those fucking things, dude, where you're like, you find yourself in like, how did I get into doing this gig?
I was like, I don't do enough things for free in stand-up comedy. Right. What's one more thing?
Right. How long have you been doing stand-up now?
Okay, so I actually had a whole conversation about that. I technically started doing comedy in like 2004-ish.
Right.
But I wasn't really doing it in any kind of regular form until like mid-2006.
Like open mics?
Yeah, like I was just doing like a monthly like bringer show for a while, and then it became like 2 bringer shows.
Yeah.
And then by like
for non-comedy fans, a bringer show is you get put on a show. You have to bring audience members. That's how you pay for your stage time.
Yeah,
right. You have to fucking rope your poor family and friends into coming to see you. Do 7 minutes.
Yeah, maybe 10 if it was a good.
I mean,
depending.
That's fucking luxury. I feel like most early bringer shows are for some reason 7 is like a number that sticks out of my head. It's like 7 minutes. You have to bring sometimes you have to bring like 7 people.
Oh, I did one at Caroline's where I had to bring 20 people.
For the bigger clubs that had bringer nights, you have to bring
and
like
this was
15
like,
people.
Yeah, and this was like a Wednesday. It's not
Right.
like this was Saturday night you were bringing 20 people. This was a Wednesday at
that's when they had those, right? That's when they had the bringer shows.
And I think I only got 18 to come, but there were obviously no complaints.
Right.
Obviously. And then
I did one once at Stand Up New York where I brought one less than the required, whatever it was 10 people. I brought 9.
And you were shot. You were shot in the leg.
They didn't let me fucking go on. And I
Whoa.
was like, wait a minute. Everyone who paid is in there. And they were like, I know, but you didn't bring 10. We can't just have.
And you brought 9.
They said we can't. Whatever the number was, right?
Wow.
Like if it was 7, I brought 6. Whatever the number was, I was one short. I remember that. And I was like, well, they paid and they're in there, so I understand the rule. Like they don't want to be lenient with anyone because they don't want people taking advantage of it. But I'm like, but for 5 minutes of fucking stage time, so give me a few minutes less. You know what I mean? Like for me to not go on, and whoever was running the bringer show there, this is like 15 years ago, and I then just texted my cousin who was in there. I was like, can we go? And they just left the show. So they lost money by not letting me.
Wow, that is
go up.
Look, I understand.
That's how brutal it is.
You know, it's one thing if you brought like 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
Even still, I'd put you on for 5 minutes. You know,
right.
What does that?
You brought someone who paid.
I don't care. You know,
like you brought paying guests.
When I associated with that new talent thing, like if people even brought one person, I was like, whatever.
You used
it's one more person than I brought.
Well, you were always very generous. You used to produce a lot of shows.
Yeah,
I remember like New York Comedy Club for a long time. You produced shows,
right? But those were like hot. We were doing like Friday nights, like primetime shows. That's a show you would want to bring people to.
At a point for me when I was barely ever getting booked, like really like first few years in, 3 years in, whatever, 2 years in, those shows you used to produce at New York Comedy Club kept me going because I wasn't getting gigs. And when you put me on one of those shows, it made and then you go on and you have a good set, you're like, oh, I actually could. It actually proved to yourself you could do it which is why bringers are better than open mics. when you're starting out because they're better in the sense that you are performing for an audience.
Yeah.
As opposed to performing for comics who are bitter and everyone's not,
There's a lot of bringer hate these days, and a lot of it's warranted because a lot of bringer producers are scumbags.
You mean hate for the concept of bringers?
The idea that you would dare to ask a comedian to promote or bring anyone to a show,
like young comics, or like how dare
anybody, and it's weird to me, which like I get, but like see, when we started doing comedy, I feel like unfortunately bringer shows were very, in a way, almost helpful because they weeded out people who weren't good.
Yeah,
because you could only do so much of that before I'm out of people.
You're out of people.
My soul is dying
Your
doing
friends
this.
are like, I am not coming to fucking see that. Dude, I think it was your show. It might have been you or Sheba Mason or one of you guys that were doing like producing them at Broadway once. And one of you guys had one of your bringer spots. You had this like young Hasidic Jewish comic. Do you remember this? Was this your? It might have been Sheba's show actually.
I don't know who we're.
It was a young Hasidic Jewish comic. He was like, maybe 20 or something like that. And he was like, and he had one of those like very thick accents that Hasidic Jewish people have, And he went on and he was like, he said to me backstage, like, by the stairs, we're all like sitting on the stairs over there. Backstage, yeah. Well, in that room upstairs, that's like not the main showroom. Backstage is just outside. And so he was like, I don't, leave the community much. So I was like, and I was
I'm not
and I remember
supposed
thinking,
to be here.
Kind of. And I remember thinking, what life experience does this dude have? I mean, sure, he could turn his experiences into something funny. Anybody could do that.
Yes.
But what life experiences, because he felt very sheltered. And he went on and ate dick for like 6 straight minutes, right? And he had longer and he just stopped. And he just got off stage. And I remember thinking like whoever, which is kind of funny. I mean, he was able to get people. He brought people. But whoever he was able to get.
He had never left that life, but then somehow had people who wanted to also go to a comedy show.
Yeah, maybe it was
That's
like
pretty impressive.
Maybe
was he in so long ago? It was probably like an AOL group or something.
Yeah, it might have been, or like
I'm a Hasidic Jew trying to leave to go do comedy.
Maybe people from his school
Who's
or
with
something.
Me?
And he did so bad. So like someone like that, right? Those people are not coming out to see him again, right? Because you go out to see your friend suck that badly, you're not, because he's not, that's a guy who doesn't have it. He's not going to be a comic. His friends aren't going to come out there and see him again. So you run out of people really quick if you're that bad.
Yeah, I mean,
you run out of people even if you're good.
I did bringer shows for like 2+ years, and I really wish I didn't. But people kept coming. And
it's a way to get stage
and
time.
there kept being like new avenues, like, oh, this one's an industry showcase. Oh, this is a place on Long Island I haven't done. I'm at this comedy club in the city. You've got to come to this one. Right. And none of it meant anything.
Right.
And it was just a waste. And now, like...
But that's how you could try to convince people to come. I'd buy them drinks. I'd be like, come out, buy your drink.
I guess I got lucky because, like, my dad would, harass and con a lot of people to coming.
Yeah. Your dad, I know your dad. I've known you for a long time. I've known you for about as long as I've been doing stuff. Like, 17, 18 years, something like that. I
think I met you in, like, late 2006.
Yeah.
You met me right after I stopped being like, oh, I don't need to do bringer shows. I can just produce my own show.
Right.
And get my friends and people to come to that. So I was doing some weird place on 7th Street called Jimmy's.
That's where I met you. Yeah,
Number 43. And for some reason, there was a bazillion animal heads on the wall.
Yeah.
And
one of those weird downtown fucking underground places.
It was like
super dark.
Right. It was like the early first gen hipster bar. And
but back then it felt like if you were doing comedy in a place like that, you felt like even though it was like, there might have been like 15 people there, or there might have been a lot, but like you felt like I'm in the city, I'm in this weird shady place, I'm doing it felt very like you felt like you were in.
Right. There was a lot of that in those days because, like, that was still, like, it was after the comedy boom, but I still feel like New York City comedy was what New York City comedy used to be.
Yeah, right.
That still existed. It does not exist. It hasn't existed now in...
It's a very different thing.
Probably, like, almost 15 years. But, yeah. So I actually found that place on Craigslist. They were like, "Hey, we want to
Found
do
the venue on Craigslist?
Yeah, I used to find a lot of weird
Whores.
gigs.
Oh, sorry.
Wow, on Craigslist. That was
Yeah.
like my booking tool in like 2006,
That's
2007, and
Oh,
and that was like the first show I did was a Tuesday night. You know, a bunch of people came to see me, and then a bunch of other people randomly and the place was packed, and it was this amazing
And you're
night.
how old at this point? You're in your early 20s?
22? I don't even know.
Right.
And then the show was never as good as that again. I did like 5-6 more shows.
Right.
I think one of them, there was only 3 people, and one was my dad, one was my girlfriend, and there was like 10 comics. And like one comic brought another comic to watch the show.
When you're
that
doing
was the whole
gigs where there's more comics than audience members, and you can hear the comics in the distance like chuckling, and there's 3 people in front who are just like,
I know it's going to be a bad show when no comics can. No, that's not true. Comics all show up too early. Sometimes they like to sit in front, and I'm like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, you're not in the audience. Yeah.
I one time I did a show a couple of years ago, and there were more comics were all setting up their camera, and no audience were and we only had like a few audience members. There were more cameras to film the show than audience.
Everyone has a camera now. Everyone has a fucking tripod.
I'm gonna get the clip tonight.
I'm gonna get the clip. I'm gonna fucking slay this crowd work, and then you can see them fishing for crowd work and not getting. The audience members are just doing that. They're just like staring at them, and they're just like fishing for that. No, okay, not you. No, nothing. All right, and then go to the next person, and then there's only 5 people there, so they just run out of people. Because they're all looking for a fucking what's his name?
Crowd. Matt Rife. I
Matt
almost called him
moment.
Daniel
They're all
Rife.
looking
I
for
don't
a
know
Matt
why.
Rife moment, but also they're not hot, so it doesn't work.
Yeah, so that's always fun. And
Weird
then,
gigs, man. Like weird shit when you're starting out in this business, and I think it used to be weirder than it is now. I feel like there's a lot of like pop-up things now that are like
that are
get a
like
lot of
organized.
People. They're organized, yeah.
People love the pop-up shows now.
Yeah.
But back in the day, they'd be like, this should be illegal.
Pop-up show used to mean you're at a bar in like Queens, New York, and you're fucking drinking with like, you know, you worked construction all day and you're there with one buddy and you're bitching about your wives. And then all of a sudden the comedy show.
This sounds like a very specific person you're describing.
It's a very specific venue. This is fucking Aldo running shows in Queens and going like, hey, do you want to go do, you know,
want to come do the Viking Bar in Astoria?
The Bungalow Lounge.
How many people would be there for the show? Maybe like 3.
Well, there might be some people there, but the point is it was truly pop-up in the sense that nobody at the venue knew there was a show happening. So they're there. They're fucking just, you know, miserable bar slouch, fucking chugging back a fucking Rolling Rock or some cheap fucking swill. And you walk in and the fucking show starts and you can audibly hear, like, when the host gets up, like, hey, guys, show's about to start. They go, oh, fuck. Like, the people at the bar are mad that a show's about to start. And you're, you know, maybe 2 years into your getting started and you're like, you're all excited. You're like, oh, this is going to be great. And everyone.
Well, yeah. Oh, I got on this random show.
Yeah. And everyone who's the audience was like, I didn't fucking come for this. Like if a band starts playing at a bar, no one cares.
Yeah, you could tune them out.
Because you could talk over music.
But like when a comedian is just starts talking at a bar, you're just like, I could hear this person's pain and it's ruining my good time.
Right. I mean, they still happen, you know, those shows still definitely happen.
Oh, sure.
But they used to be the way to do, like, the way to get stage time when you couldn't get a, you know, like.
I love when there'd be, like, one audience member and everyone's doing crowd work to them. Like, that's how supervillains are created. There were 12 comedians on the show and they all asked where I was from. Never again.
Yeah. I'm an accountant. Yeah. You know, and those fucking,
I would change it for every comic.
I did a show once that was in the bar area of a bowling alley. So you're in the bar. It's not the bowling alley itself. The bowling alley is like separated by a door.
Was this another Aldo show, or this
might have been?
Or did you do my bowling alley show? Because I did have a bowling.
It was a huge venue. There's a big bar area. and like the waitresses would get drinks at the bar and then go to the bowling alley to serve those beers to the bowlers. When they would open the door while you were doing your set, you would just fucking hear pins scratch.
Yeah.
And you would just be in the middle of a set. It's like,
okay, yeah. So that was the show in Queens, I think.
that might have been, yeah. I want to say it was Queens or Long Island.
That's like a famous bowling alley. I think they closed.
Oh, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
you know
I
the
did
video
it a
I'm talking
few
about.
times. It could be okay sometimes.
Right.
I feel like there's never more than like 10 people there, but at least they were there for the show because nobody was in that room by accident.
Yeah. Well, I remember there were like a few pop-up seats right in front, but then there was a whole bar that people were just there for the bar. And then you had the bowling alley. So you had like 3 different crowds in this fucking place.
It's great.
You've had a lot of weird gigs, right? Like a lot of weird, like outside of comedy too, right? Like jobs and
especially when I started doing comedy, because I had a very brief time early on where I was like, I'm just gonna try to make a living entirely from entertainment-based things, and I once again I was scouring Craigslist, and I got like some weird acting gigs out of it, and so one they were looking for somebody to film a scene for TLC, but not TLC TLC UK.
Oh, okay.
It was like a $20 acting gig.
How long ago was this?
This was like 2006.
2006.
And what's really funny is somebody recently booked me on a show, and for some reason used TLC as my credit. And I was
where did they pull that out?
I was like, where did they?
On a website or something as a credit?
Maybe some website that I haven't updated in many years.
If you're emceeing a show, ask the comic.
No, it was on the flyer. It wasn't on the. Oh. Yeah, I was like,
also
Joe Pontillo from TLC, MTV.
That which makes me feel like people would go into that being like, did this guy used to be 400 pounds?
Right. Does this guy have like 8 twins?
Right. He's Mormon. I think he's Mormon.
He's an octuplet. And they all do comedy. What a nightmare. But so it was a show called Ultimate Blunders. And we just filmed it somewhere
in British sounding show.
Ultimate Blunders. Oh no, Prince Charles can't fit in the parking spot.
That's a British blunder.
That's
Prince Charles.
Why is he driving his own car? He's royalty. What an absolute blunder.
Well, he doesn't have drivers because, there was that one time with the driver.
Oh.
There's...
Jeez, that wasn't even
that was a blunder.
Yeah, that was the biggest blunder in comedy history. Comedy history. Rest in peace. But yeah, what was it? But soon. Yeah, so it was some woman was backing into a spot, and then it was supposed to look like she was picking her nose, and then when she gets out of the car after failing to park, I come over as like the guy who's like, "Oh God," and then just like,
you were doing this.
Yeah. So dumb. So there was that.
What a blunder.
And then I got this acting gig where I had to go to Penn Station in Newark. Mm-hmm. And it was me and like probably about 100 people.
Was it like a film thing?
No. They just kept filming us running out of the tunnel as if a terrorist attack had happened. Yeah. Okay. And I got like $200 or $250 for this. But years later, I'm like, was I a crisis actor? Was that just like
maybe? Was
that just like fake footage that they were using to like for future like terrorist attacks? But at the time, I was like, they were like, I think they said it was for like tunnel safety or what to do in the event of terrorism because it was like 2006, so it wasn't that long past 9/11.
Yeah.
So. Right. But yeah, and then I remember this was like the brief stretch in between me quitting my job for Cablevision, yeah, and then going back to work for my dad sheepishly after I had quit for him the first time. Well, I was like, I'm just going to do comedy because I have one paid gig coming.
And when you say work with your dad, that's doing like auto body stuff, right? Like
no, my dad was in He's still in bakery supplies, actually.
Wait. I thought your dad did like car stuff.
My dad hates cars. Yeah, my dad works with cars as in he just beats the shit out of all of his cars.
Maybe I thought that because the mutual friend that our dads have, which is how we met,
was a mechanic or something. Yeah. And I still don't even understand who that guy was. Was his name like Gazzapo or something? Something like overly...
he had... You know what? You're right. He had some... His name's Dom, but he had some weird... like
You're gonna book my friend's son here, and I feel like you said no words when I met you. You were just like, yeah, comedy.
It kind of felt like a fucking
like a sit down.
22-year-olds being set up for a fucking play date. It was really weird because my dad was
You're
like,
gonna put him on a comedy show.
my dad was like, oh, Gazpacho, whatever his fucking name was, he's got whatever, the Gestapo's got a friend, and his kid does comedy, because I was just telling my dad I wanted to do stand-up, and I'm like 20 or something.
Well, my dad did stand-up briefly in the early 80s. Yeah. I don't know if you ever knew that.
No, I did not know that. But
he never like got in your face and was like, I did comedy at 81, but then my son was born and I quit.
First of all, I fucking love your dad. I love your dad. Your dad is just the fucking chillest. He's such a supporter of yours.
Yeah.
And I've seen him at a million shows, and he's always, he brings me in for a hug like I'm one of his kids, Well,
yeah, your name is so Italian. Like, you've just achieved full Italianness, so you deserve...
You could only greet another person so Italian with a hug and a double cheek kiss.
But yeah, no, he used to have his own bakery supply business, which I sporadically worked for.
Okay.
And then when I graduated college, I was doing full-time. But then for some reason, I don't know why, I decided, like... Well, I'm starting to do comedy now, and I got my first paid gig, which paid $50.
That's a first paid gig, man.
And
that feels good.
And then I got a second gig, and I was like, maybe I have enough saved up. Maybe I should just focus. But then I quit working for my dad and immediately took a job at Cablevision.
You showed him.
Yeah. Because, we had like a family friend that worked for Cablevision.
Like corporate, or you were like setting up people's cable?
I was doing the lowest end of the totem pole job.
Yeah.
This was the mid-2000s, so like psychopaths would come and bring you a VHS tape that has their terrible public access TV show on it.
Okay.
So I would have to take the tape, put it into, the machine and digitize it so that it could play that night or whenever it was supposed to be on.
Does this make you realize how old we are?
Yeah.
Is that you had a job where people handed you VHS tapes and you had to digitize it?
And I would, and they were mostly like either Spanish shows or like something really religious.
Okay.
Public
access.
The Jesus poetry show or something.
Right.
And then and I remember there was one guy who would show up every like Sunday as I was about to leave, and he was like, "Here's the tape," and I'm like, "I'm leaving," and he's like, "Please,
I need to get this on."
Yeah. And one time he actually...
We know some comics like that.
One time he actually gave me... One time he actually gave me $20 to please not leave and just stay and digitize the tape. And
Is that what you're considering your first paid comedy gig?
That was my third paid comedy gig. No.
But about $50. Do you remember the feeling of your first person handing you money to do the thing you've been doing for free for years?
Oh, so the way I got my first paid gig is so funny. I was doing this guy... Bob DeBono.
I know. Yeah,
bringer shows at like Stand Up New York.
Sure.
And like I had done enough, and I'd always brought people, so he liked me because I made him money. And he was like, I started to press him. I was like, who's people I can do real gigs for? And he gave me some info. And then one time he called me like on a Saturday and was like, "What are you doing tonight?" And I was just like, I don't know. Blah, blah. And then I like couldn't say yes fast enough, and he got mad, and he's like, "Look, when I call you about an opportunity in comedy, you got to say yes." These are okay.
I mean, look, he's not wrong.
Yeah,
he's not wrong in a sense that like they don't. You get.
Like, I know. Even
he'll
to this,
never call you again if you say no.
Exactly. Well, he will, because he'll be like, "Can you bring people to Stand Up New York next week?"
But okay, for bringers, he'll call you again, but he's not going to call you for a non-bringer ever again if you say no.
But even to this day, if I get hit up like the day of for something, I'm annoyed, but at the same time, I'm like, yes, but but you're also like, God, I wish I knew this in advance.
Yeah, but it is funny that bookers expect you to not have a life either. So like they're like,
acting is like that too. Yeah. Like I'll get hit up by my acting manager and be like, "Hey, can you do this audition in the next 12 minutes?" And I'm like, "No."
I said no to a gig to go somewhere like in South Jersey with PJ Landers once.
Wow,
And
what a name drop.
He said, it might have been one of your shows, like New York Comedy Club. He was like, hey, do you want to come do this thing for me, like, tomorrow?
He picked
and it was
you?
like a
Oh, okay.
Sunday. Yeah. He was very nice, and he offered me like an opener type of thing, and I said no because of something I had personal. I had like
And he just
family
and he just goes,
christening.
"You're a piece of shit."
No, but he gave no. He was all right, but he did give me like a lecture on like, you don't say no to gigs, like you're just starting out. And I was like,
Yeah,
well,
no,
he wasn't wrong. Like I didn't hold that as like a wow. How could he? I was like, yeah, he's right, but I had like a very important family thing.
Right. Well, my advice to like newer comics is I go, just do everything. Someone asks you to do something, it's in another state and you're new, just go do it. Who cares?
Yeah.
I used to drive to Jersey once
yeah.
a month or once every other month to go do a free show on Thursdays at a restaurant in Springfield. And for no money, no food. We were looking if we got water.
Not
But I
even
was
drink
like,
tickets?
it's state. No, this.
Because for a while,
this
you
was
kind of
bef-
worked for drink tickets.
I feel like this was before drink tickets became big in comedy.
okay.
That was like 2010s.
2010 is when drink tickets.
But the
became
guy
fire.
who used to run that show, he loves me. I'm like one of his favorite comedians.
It took 14
and he
years.
books me gigs,
Yeah.
of like at least a couple a year, but
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
It's something. So that's why I just don't say. This is why I don't understand people in comedy who like refuse to deal with people or refuse to like just be like somewhat cordial and kind.
Yeah.
Like respond to a
Dude, but
message.
it's so much of
Yeah.
there's so many guys out there that are like that, and I don't know if it's like an ego thing before you're supposed to have an ego, like like a lot of young comics have an ego, and you're like, you're no one, like where is that ego coming from? But then again, comedy does attract people with like that weird
mental
thing where-
issues.
yeah, and
being
also.
nice.
And also like insane ego, but then insane like depression. Like you hate yourself and love yourself at the same time. That is, comedy does sort of attract that.
Something like that. That's why I'm on this podcast.
Because you're just looking for desperate attention.
Please, you want to talk to me for 2 hours? Yeah. Oh God, yes.
Yeah, how many tolls do I have to pay to get there?
So this guy Bob DeBono and then called me back and yelled at me and was like, yeah, okay, I'll drive you to this gig. So I go do this gig, also in New Jersey, and I go and I do it's in the basement of a restaurant called the Callaloo Cafe.
Okay.
And there's a guy hosting who I knew also did Bob Springer shows, and he was fucking terrible. Just horrible comic. He's on stage, he's wearing sandals. And I'm like, I've never hated someone more. I hated everybody
Nothing says you don't care to be somewhere like wearing sandals in public.
Yeah, you're like your host. This is probably this guy's first and probably only paid gig because I'm pretty sure he quit
Unless you're
within
at
a year.
beach bar, don't wear sandals.
Yeah, I mean it was the summer, but come on.
Yeah, but you're working.
You're working, exactly. It's not like it's an outdoor gig. You're indoors, you weirdo. So, so he does terrible, and then he brings me up to do a guest spot. And I feel like I got like 0 laughs, but it didn't matter because then Bob was just like, call, this guy Gary on Monday. Tell him you did great.
Tell him you did great.
And then you'll get the host next month. And then, again, this was so long ago that I would have to call people to get bookings.
Right.
And this guy.
There's no Insta to check out and DM.
Right. You'd call this guy and he just wouldn't pick up like 70% of the time. And it was
that happened so much back then. That used to happen all the time. Call this guy, and then the guy never got a heads up.
No, yeah, you left him
What?
You left him a message. It wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
And then he'd randomly pick up, and he'd be like, "Hello," and I'm like, "Yeah, this is Joe Pontillo." Who? Well, I just did the Callaloo Cafe, Bob DeBono.
Where's that?
All right, you want to host next month? $50, and then I think he said,
And it's you paying him $50.
yeah. I think
Bring $50.
I think for some reason he said $50 in U.S. currency. I was like, thank you for clarifying. I was a little uncertain.
He thought you were off the boat, Joe
I
Pontillo.
just don't know. So then I go and I host the show the next month, and I'm terrible. I'm not ready to do this.
Right.
It goes, the whole crowd, people when they talk about bombing don't understand what bombing is. Bombing is when the audience starts doing something else. rather like they've paid for the show, but they're not. It's one thing to not get laughs because sometimes the crowd just sucks.
Yeah, and
That's not
sometimes the
bombing.
thing they're doing doesn't even, you wouldn't even expect it. Like, oh, that woman's knitting. Like, you know, like sometimes.
Bombing is when the whole audience just starts talking to each other.
They're
And
having a
like,
separate
fuck
event.
this guy.
They're having a separate event. They're now in a conversation like they're out to dinner for a birthday party.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's like 5 people at a table. They're, you know,
it's become a show where they're almost like they don't know there's comedy, even though clearly there's comedy. It's like reverse pop-up show.
Right. They knew coming in, and now they wish there wasn't comedy happening.
Yeah. And then I had to bring up the next comedian, and I had told, and it's a comedian I still work with once in a while today, and I told her, like, all right, well, you know, be by the side. And for whatever reason, she just wouldn't go by the side. I could see her in the back watching me bomb. And I'm like, why won't you go by
You're
the
not
side?
close enough.
I
need you closer.
I would like to bring you on and never be here again. And yeah, so my God, that went so bad. But at the same time, I was like, yeah, paid gig.
Yeah.
And then this guy gave me another gig in Connecticut like 2 months later. And that was the gig that convinced me I need to stop working for my dad. And then like a week or two before that gig happened, the guy called me, Joe Pontillo? Yeah, I'm taking you off the Connecticut gig. They only want 2 comics. Give me a call back sometime, though, and I'll get you something else. Bye. I'm like, well, that's it. My career's over.
But then you know, because you have the ups and downs in comedy, of course, and you still have them. Like, ups and downs never really go away. It's just that the downs don't, like, fuck you up as much. You know what I mean? Like by downs, I mean, like, just a bad show. Whatever. The fucking audience isn't into it. Whatever. You just kind of go, like, yeah, whatever. It's fine. It's not me. It's not me. It's them. But hold on. Sidebar, though. What's your worst bomb?
Oof, well, that was close.
That was close.
There were 3 bad bombs, but 2 of them were before 2010. So there was that show.
Don't qualify it by the year. What does that matter?
Well, if there
it doesn't matter if it was before 2010 is when comedy started.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned.
What does that matter?
There was that show, and then there was a show at this place in Suffolk County. What the hell were they called? Gateway Comedy, where they were just
that's still around there.
I guess so. But then they ended up moving like right across the street from
I've never done it. I don't know. Yeah, from where?
Like right across the street from where McGuire's is.
Oh,
I'm
which is like an established governor's own.
I mean, granted, it's a big highway.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're walking across the street.
like 8 lanes, sure.
Yeah.
But it's cross street. Yeah, okay.
So, and I don't know. It was just kind of the same thing as the show, my first paid gig, except this time I wasn't being paid, where just the audience just kind of just started doing their own thing.
Right.
And then I remember I was making fun of some guy because he sort of looked like Adam West. And then I just remember ending the set by saying something like really fucked up, like, hope you all get AIDS and die in car crashes tonight.
Right.
Like just something over the top.
Double death.
And then, like,
AIDS and dying.
Yeah, and then like I remember someone came up to me after the show and they were like, "Oh, you weren't really that bad, but you kept making fun of that guy, you know, who looked like Adam West, but he was like with you." And I'm like, "Was he? Who are you? Why are you talking to me? Were you laughing? Go away." That was I always remember that as being a really bad show. And then 2020, I had a show, and it wasn't even a complete bomb. But it was just
But it caused COVID.
It caused COVID, and it was close enough. No, and it was just like one of these shows where you just like sort of just lose control of the situation.
So in 2020, this is an in-person. This is not a virtual show.
Yeah, this is February 2020. So
because
it's like
every virtual show is a bomb.
No, that's not true. But
No, but you know what I mean. They don't feel like bombs because you don't really get the reaction as much.
That was the year we all bombed. No, but yeah. So it's at White Plains Comedy Club. I'm opening for some Instagram influencer. So the first show was very good. Like, in fact, people after the show were like, "You were better than the headliner." Yeah. Second show, I guess, was mostly people there to see this guy. They just did not give a shit about me.
Yeah, they were only there for
jokes
him,
were just bombing and dying, and then they got chatty to the point where there was
an Instagram person who's also a comic, or an Instagram person who started doing comedy.
I don't know if he was doing comedy and then just blew up on Instagram.
Well, the reason why I ask is because I do feel like audience.
He's Italian. Does that help? Does that narrow it down?
There's a few.
Okay.
There's a few. I think I might know what you're talking about. But the reason why I'm asking that is because those are kind of audience members that are not necessarily comedy fans.
Yes.
And they're literally like, who the fuck? Like, they don't care.
How dare they put another person up before my guy?
Right.
Well, he's a younger guy. Like, there's an older Italian comic who's like blew up from Snapchat, from using Snapchat filters.
Vic? No.
Anthony Rodia.
Oh, Anthony Rodia. Yeah, sure.
I opened for him one time, and it was an amazing show, but his crowds are real audiences.
Yeah.
So I'm opening for this Instagram.
There's a lot of shit with Goomba Johnny, right?
Does he?
Yeah, I think so. Goomba Johnny, I knew him because I used to work in radio.
I just worked with Goomba Johnny in January.
He's a good dude.
And I think it was actually the first time I ever met him, but he acted like he knew me, and I was like, sure, why not?
That's kind of Goomba Johnny.
Yeah, man, I've been on your show.
That's kind of Goomba Johnny. I love Goomba Johnny. I was like an intern, or just starting out on like a street team at New York radio. So I knew him for years, just from like when he was on the radio in the morning.
Liar.
Great, he's a great dude.
Oh yeah, he seems like it. Yeah, very nice guy.
Yeah.
So the show in White Plains, I'm just getting nothing. I would get like a laugh here or there.
Sure.
But then they would just descend right back into like doing their own thing.
Right.
And it got to the point where I could loudly hear some guy at the table right next to the stage say something like, "Oh man, this is hard to watch," or "This guy's painful." And I just kind of, and man, this is the one thing I hate, not hate, but just like when I need to respond to somebody, I just go right into like, I'm just going to kill you.
Yeah. Right, you go from zero. It's hard not to sometimes, man, because you're trying to be a comic about it, but you're also like a fucking human being who's just mad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
it's like one of these things where I'm like, I don't understand why this crowd is just not into anything I'm doing.
Right. And then
this fuckhead says something, and I'm just like, yeah, well, think about how I feel. I don't even know what I said. I said no, but you're also just mad because these people see you and they're like,
have you ever considered my feelings in this whole
they're like,
scenario?
this guy sucks because he's doing bad this one time. Meanwhile, I've been doing this for like 14 years at this point.
Yeah.
And, I've never gotten a laugh. I've bombed my entire life, and I refuse to quit. And I do this. This is how every show goes, you fucking small, worthless piece of shit. I don't even know who I'm yelling at right now.
You're yelling at bar audiences.
That's what I should have said.
Shows
to that
everywhere.
Guy.
You're yelling at the idea of an audience that is not into a comedy show. It is frustrating because you're like, no, motherfucker, you have no fucking clue. What you're talking
exactly.
about.
That's what I was trying to convey, but it just came out as just like, I'll kill you. Like I don't even. And then I think I said something about, well, this was my last show, and then of course multiple people come up to me afterwards and was like, no, you shouldn't quit. Like you're good. This crowd just sucked, and I'm like, I've been doing this so long. This is just a very bad night.
Right.
And then the best part was like the next show I did after that was like performing for people in wheelchairs with like brain disabilities at like a veterans hospital in Queens. So it's not like I was going to bounce back the next day. It's all right. I got a good gig tomorrow.
And then you also were like, I'll fucking kill you if you're not laughing at this joke.
Well, that one you do for, because you support the troops. I don't know.
Support the troops.
God. So, yeah.
So speaking of angry bums, my third show I ever did was Stand Up New York, because they had bringers that they allowed you to do, right? So, and I remember I brought the girl I was dating at the time and some friends. She brought some friends, and I had like a cousin there and stuff. And I just didn't, we were making fun of it now, of like young guys now trying to do crowd work and it not working. But I also fell into that where I thought that was like an easy thing to do.
Hey, you look like you need your car fixed.
There was a table right in front of me, and I started off okay. My first minute I was getting some laughs. I was like, I could have rolled right into a good set. But I just didn't have the awareness. I didn't have I didn't know how to read the room. And I went to this table, and I should have known from the first few comments that it wasn't going to work. And I should have just got off of them.
Right.
But I kept going with them. And I don't really remember what I said, except for that I was making a comment. There was like a couple and their girlfriend, like their friend, that was girl. And I was honing in on this couple. And I don't really remember what I said. I just remember honing in on like their size difference. It was like a really tall, skinny dude and like a larger woman. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what I said something about their size difference, and the friend got really mad. And the friend starts yelling at me. And she's like, that's fucked up. And now I'm a minute into my whatever 10 minutes, right? I'm a minute in, and I don't have the experience now.
It took a minute for someone to say that's fucked up.
Well, no, I did like a joke or two.
Too soon.
I did a joke or two, and then I went to this table. So that whole ordeal was like a minute and a half. And now this woman's yelling at me. Not the couple I'm talking to. They're like, okay, they're laughing.
Okay.
But their friend feels offended on their behalf. And I probably was saying some offensive shit. And I don't have the experience or the know how to pivot this situation. Somebody yelling at you is also hard to pivot even when you have the experience.
Right.
Like if they're yelling, And I think I just sort of, in that same way that you talked about getting angry, I was like, well, then you fucking do it. And I just... And I went like, well, yeah, what are you going to fucking say? And I like acted like I was going to give her the microphone, and she just went like this. Wow. She just backed up and folded her arms like, no, this is all you now. And then I remember looking up at the rest of the audience. It's a very packed club.
And they're all like,
this is like sold out stand-up New York crowd. So
right.
It's a lot of people there. And I'm like, everyone's horrified. I remember seeing people's faces that are horrified, right? So I didn't jump. I just stayed on stage. I just fucking bombed for the next 8 minutes.
Nice.
I've never left stage early.
But did you bring enough people?
I've never left stage early. In fact, you constantly remind me that I go too long.
No, that was the opposite.
What did I went to?
Yes, you did.
No, you always tell me that
You did horrifically blow the light that one time, and I'll never let you live that down. But
you don't ever let me live that.
I really don't care because whatever. But it's just that show is always so tight.
Right.
You have to be done by 8:30. That's not happening.
Yeah, well, you reminded me.
And I'm like, I have like 25
gigs.
people in the crowd. They're gonna get out by the time for the next show.
So I am like, I'm not fucking jumping stage. I had enough courage to stay up there, but I should have fucking left. It was one of those bombs that you're talking about where everyone now is so uncomfortable. I couldn't get him back out. I'm like, and I forgot my material. Like I got so nervous up there. It's my third time on stage. And my first 2 times it went really well, in my mind. They were like, so I'm now like fucking freaking out and I'm sweating and I'm losing. I don't remember my jokes.
Yeah.
I don't know how to get back to the topic. I used to print out my set list and put it in like a little piece of paper in my back pocket.
What joke is gonna get them back?
Well, and I couldn't figure it out. And then I had my set list printed in my back pocket and I took it out to look at it because it was so bad, dude. And I was
you should have been like, let's try a reset here.
Yeah. Well, it's like I don't even I feel like when you have a phone, you could fake it as like you're checking the time, but it was a piece of paper. Back then, I had to print it on my computer.
You should have just been like, how's everyone doing tonight?
Yeah, I started re-announce myself to the stage. So I just eat dick for the next 8.5 minutes. I go, all right, thank you. Bye. And I go and I get like a smattering of a fucking real pity.
Hell yeah.
And this is a full crowd. And they're like, right? And so I get off. And this rolls into...
It's Carmelo over.
This rolls into... Thank you. This rolls into one of the worst nights of my life at this point, because what happens is the girl I'm dating at the time, who there's a horrible toxic relationship happening, right? And aside from
oh, good,
not just my horrible toxic relationship with comedy, I have an actual one going on. And I get off stage and I'm talking to whoever was running the show at the time, and it's a female comic, and she sees me she just saw suicide in my eyes. And she says to me, right as my then girlfriend at the time comes out, who's also a very jealous person, right? Like a very angry person.
Okay.
Now, the host says to me, just go home and get a blowjob. Like, she's trying to tell me, she's trying to pass it off as like, this happens, people bomb. She's trying to in her own way encourage me to be like, don't get so down about it. You just start she said something along those lines and was like, go home and get a blowjob. You'll be fine. You'll come back next week or whatever. And I was like, all right, whatever. But as she says that to me, the girl I'm dating at the time comes out and hears it. And all she heard, I think, was blowjob. And I know this woman, and I know that she's going to have a reaction just that of any woman's saying anything. So I act like I don't see her, right? And I just panic and I walk out of the venue. and I walk out.
Oh no!
And now I'm walking down the block. I'm acting like I'm just going outside to blow off some steam, but I know that the girl at the time who I'm dating is seeing me, and she follows me out, and then
you just start running.
Well, I'm walking fast.
Okay,
I'm also a little.
What are you doing?
I don't know. I'm panicking.
In case you didn't look guilty enough, I'm just gonna leave. Taxi. Please give me.
I'm panicking.
Take me somewhere.
I don't know why. I was just in my head was like, go, leave.
What the hell?
And so I walk out, and
you didn't just bomb on the show. You bombed in life.
I bombed it. This was what I'm saying. And all of a sudden, I hear high heels running after me.
Oh my God.
And they're getting faster and closer. And I'm like, holy shit, what has happened? Why is she running? And I'm like, I'm committing to the bit now. I don't know she's there. I'm like, I don't acknowledge that she's there.
I would have pretended took a phone call or something.
And so,
or take out your notes again and be like,
review my notes.
These are my girlfriend notes for when I don't know what to talk about.
So she fucking loads up and punched me. This is how quickly it's escalated. She punched me in the spine. I swear to you, I don't know if...
And you were paralyzed for 6 months.
Dude, like, she hit me so hard. This is a chick. She hits me so hard in my spine that I felt like a vibration down to my asshole.
What the
like,
hell?
I am telling you that, like, I thought she broke something in my back. And now I'm like mad, but I don't have my legs under me. She hit me hard. Like, I turned around like a fucking newborn deer. Like, my legs are wobbly. I'm like, what the fuck? And I turn around and she's like, what did that bitch say to you? Because I was right. She heard the word blowjob. And
That's it. She just said the word blowjob, and I don't know if it was a question or a statement, so I just left.
Yeah. And like, let me explain something to you. I don't have it in life like that. No one has ever come up to me like, "Can I blow you?" Like, that is not like no stranger has ever come up. Like, is that what you think happened? Do you think that someone just said,
you
like,
just
can
had
I give
the
you a
worst
blowjob?
set of your life, and someone was like, "You're getting your dick sucked now." I love when comics bomb. It makes me so horny.
I actually live off of their despair, which I get through their semen. You know, so like now this girl I'm dating hits me. So I'm now like, I'm gonna quit comedy and I have to break up with her. So now like everything's just like falling apart in my life. Friends come out, they get between us. I think they thought that I was gonna do something, which I wasn't, because I was barely standing. She fucking almost took me out. And that is my worst bomb. I got assaulted by the person I was dating. I fucking bombed. It was what will go down as, at that point, one of the worst nights of my life.
And then following that, you're like, and if you enjoyed me tonight, I'll be at New York Comedy Club next Friday.
Getting punched in the spinal cord.
Holy crap. That's
So I did a show once underneath the Fridays in Times Square.
Oh, okay.
Was
it a Charlie O's or something? I mean, not Charlie O. A Joe Franklin's Comedy Club?
No, I don't know. It was like, there's a Fridays upstairs, and then there was like he had called it like LOLs or something.
Oh,
like
yeah.
He made up a name.
All right, interesting.
He made up a name, and you go downstairs, and there's like the checkered tablecloth that they use in Fridays, or just on the table. So it just felt like it was Fridays. And I'm pretty sure he like hired the waitstaff from Fridays to come down and serve drinks.
Probably.
From Friday.
He probably gave them drugs.
And it was just so it was underneath, it's below ground, and there's like 10, and we're barking, right? So we're like we're pulling people in. And first show goes like okay, but the second show now it's like midnight. No. Yeah, second show's like 10 o'clock. My mic gives out while I'm doing stand-up, which, you know, in shitty venue, I'm sure that's happened to you or shows you've been on, right? Like the PA systems go out.
Oh, I had a show a couple of months ago where the mic didn't work for like the first 5 minutes. Didn't matter. I was killing.
There's no AV person there.
Yeah.
There's no one there these are the weird things that you do in comedy. So I'm below Fridays, there's no mic working. Then he's like, all right, we're going to have our third show. I'm like, there's no microphone.
We barely had a first
We did the third show like a cappella, and everyone was fucking annihilated. And that was also one of those weird. It was still kind of fun because it was weird.
That's the thing. You can't stop comedy. There was a power outage, and they were still doing a show by candlelight with no mic at Broadway Comedy Club in 2019.
Oh, but like the power outage didn't happen during the show.
No, it happened during the show. The show started. the power went out in the middle of it, and they just kept going.
Well, I also feel like probably people couldn't even pay because everything's electronic payments.
Yes, I was on the next show, and thankfully the power came back on by the time that happened. But yeah, but we were ready to do it without power, which could have been terrible.
Well, somehow we survived it, right? We survived all the weird fucking gigs. Yeah, not all the weird gigs; they still happen.
Oh yeah,
but those like moments that really make or break you, which I feel like are. In the end, I guess I look back at those moments and go like, I guess those kind of made me stronger. I
had this run recently where
do you think like that, or do you think
multiple times I was doing a gig and I got someone booked on it, and before the show happened or before they got there, I preemptively apologized. Mm-hmm. I was like, this might be terrible, and all the shows were great. So that's my new thing now. I just apologize beforehand. I'm like, sorry if this sucks. Why would you say that? Just in case.
Well, first of all, I have to explain to people when you do a Joe Pontillo produced show, you always come off like you don't even know if the show's gonna happen. Even if it's a fucking packed house, you could be a packed house at a good comedy club and you've got a good lineup and everything's fucking firing all. You could tell before the show starts, the room's buzzing. It's a good show, and you go and talk to Joe backstage. He's got like.
I'm like, I'm not even going on.
Yeah, you've said that before. You're like, I don't know if I'm gonna go.
I go like full blown like Larry David on those when I'm producing shows. That's
and then
it.
I'm like, when am I going on? You're like, I don't know yet. And I'm like, well, the show's starting in a half a second. And you're like, yeah, all right. And then you write down a set list on like some scrap. You always have some weird scrap of paper,
ripped up, pre-used piece of paper.
It looks like it was in your pocket, got washed in the washing machine and dryer.
I've been chewing it.
And
I write the lineup down and spit on it.
I can't understand any of the names you wrote. Sometimes you forget the names, so you write nicknames for them.
Host, whoever shows up. Comic I hate. Carmelo with a question mark.
Italian guy.
Yeah.
Italian guy 1. Italian guy 2.
Italian guy 2.
Spanish girl. And you're like, Joe, no one knows. She's not even Spanish.
They'll figure it out.
Anyway, Joe, plug your stuff, like, your socials, your website, anything you got going on. No gigs, because I don't know when this is airing.
Yeah, that's fine. Go subscribe to me on YouTube, and you can check out my show, The Joe Pontillo Show, and I guess my comedy special that it's over a year old now, but if you want to watch it, that's fine too.
What is it called?
No one asked for this. And
that's how most people feel.
Yeah, that's most of comedy. No one asked for it. But more importantly, I guess follow me on Instagram and TikTok before they shut it down. That's Pontillogram. And I guess I'm on Twitter if you still use it, or X, whatever we're calling it these days.
What's your show, Joe Pontillo show? That's your YouTube show.
It's a YouTube show. And it's not a podcast yet. It could become one.
What is it?
It's basically just a talk show as of now.
It's like a sit down with like someone else.
I've done 5
this kind of thing, like
sort of, like but I've done 5 episodes and 3 of them were just me.
Oh, okay.
Because I interview myself the best. Right. I switch seats. I go back and forth. Well, interesting. You should bring that up, Joe.
Yeah, you're gonna go on your show next week with yourself and talk shit about the show.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Joe Pontillo, thank you so much.
Sure.
I'm Carmelo Bon Jovi. Sure. And this is a bit too much. Like, subscribe, all the shit that you're supposed to do, right?